But when we get those high prices is when major companies start to produce a lot of cash and start to compete with each other to grow, and you're entering into your classic mergers and acquisition phase on this. And that's we need that feeding frenzy from the majors to be looking for the type of asset that we're delivering. So to me, that's the most exciting thing, is that this is, despite all the challenges we've had over the last year and our current challenges to get this back and drilling and back visible, is that we have potential for this to be delivering a project in almost a perfect storm of demand and prices.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Today I'm sitting down with John Black, CEO and Director of Regulus Resources. John, Happy New Year to you, first of all, and welcome back. It's great to have you on the show again. How you doing?
Happy New Year to you as well, John. It's good to be back.
So 2020 was an interesting year, I think, for everyone. Obviously we had the health crisis in the world, but you also, and that affected Regulus as it did every other company out there. But, there was also some big positives. Since we've had you on last, you've closed your deal with Osisko Gold Royalties. So the company is sitting with a nice, $12.5 million in the US in the bank now. How are you feeling just from an overall standpoint going into 2021 versus where you were at in 2020?
Yeah, we're pretty anxious. As you recall, when we started out 2020, we just received our permits that would allow us to begin to test the area to the north of the project. As you might recall, the AntaKori project is a large copper gold sulfide deposit that we have immediately adjacent to an operating mine, the Tetuatai mine of Coimolache. Maybe if we pull up the first figure, we can take a look at the location on the project. And this is a view looking to the northwest, and it shows the conceptual pit that constrains our current resource. And where that's colored, the block model that's colored is on our ground. So the mineralization that occurs on our ground covers the northern part of this conceptual pit. The pit extends to the south onto the Tetuatai mine ground. They have copper gold sulfides beneath their operating oxide mine there. We can't report the resource. We have a data sharing agreement with them that allows us to model the pit in this manner, but we can't report the resource. So the AntaKori project has a large resource in hand. We have over 250 million tons of indicated resource and about 267 million tons of inferred resource. So over 500 million tons of resource in the pit on our ground at a very attractive grade, approximately a 0.7 copper equivalent grade. But it's very much open to the north. And so we were anxious to move into this area called Anta Norte. It's the northern extension of AntaKori. We were just set up to drill in March on that when the worldwide health crisis hit, and we had to shut everything down. So we did learn a lot in 2020. First, we focused on keeping our people safe. Then we learned how we can continue to work by distance. We're learning to do a lot of webinars and web seminars, both for internal work, but also for communicating with companies that are interested in monitoring what we're doing. So we're still able to enter under confidentiality agreements with major copper or gold companies that want to review the project, that want to be looking for projects like this. During the year, the gold price shot up, which drew in a lot of interest from the major gold companies. This project is both. It's dominantly a copper deposit, but it has very substantial gold and silver credits to it. So it's the type of project that's drawing the interest of the major gold companies. It has potential to be very, very long life, very high production mine. So those are the type assets that those groups are looking for. So that was a welcome relief. And then now, late last year and certainly well into this year, we're seeing copper price take off pretty strongly. So we have a great environment in terms of the metal prices. It's exactly what we'd like to see as we drill out a project like this. There are very few assets like this that are undeveloped that are available for potential acquisition. Our business model is to drill a project like this out, de-risk it, and then ideally monetize it by selling to a major company. And in this case, it could be the joint venture operating the mine next door, or it could be another group interested in acquiring our position to become a partner with that joint venture next door. So everything was well set up. We began our drilling late in the year after a period of time to make sure that we could do so carefully and cautiously, given the virus and what we had to do to make sure we kept the people on our own team safe and the communities we work in safe. And as we got that started, we got the first 2 holes in, and the project began to draw a little bit of interest. So we've had to temporarily suspend the drilling as we work out with a larger audience of people around the project area to make sure they're comfortable with what we're doing. But we anticipate we'll be back to drilling here very shortly. So we're looking forward to 2021 as a year that we'll continue to drill this project out to the north. But it's important to keep in mind we already have a pretty good start in hand as we get going on the project here. It's a combination of both a brownfields project with a lot of blue sky potential to increase the size.
Absolutely. So on the note of the drilling delay that was announced at the end of November, do you have a pretty good idea of when you'll be back drilling? It sounds like you're kind of expecting it to be soon.
Yeah, we anticipate it'll be quite soon. I can give a little bit of a context on what it is. As we started drilling, we had to be very careful how we drilled and how we maintained everybody safe and kept small groups and isolated groups on how we were doing this. And Peru is currently in kind of a tumultuous political situation in that they recently had a series of presidents all through a normal constitutionally run process, but unfortunately some changes, and we're leading up to a major presidential election in April. So it's a period of time when we see a lot of political interest, a lot of strikes and protests and things like this. It's normal. We experience this every 4 years in Peru. But right at this point in time, we stick our heads up with an active project, and we're one of the few projects exploring in Cajamarca right now. And so we had all the permissions from the local communities, the area of our direct influence to move forward. People were quite happy that we're working, but we suddenly began to draw a lot of interest from people from slightly farther afield, both interest in potential benefits they could receive from the projects or concerns about the nature of the project. And it became a little unwieldy for us to manage large conversations and still keep within our COVID protocols and keep things logical. So we took the decision to temporarily suspend the drilling while we work that out and make sure everybody's on the same page. Those conversations are going well, and we anticipate we'll be drilling quite soon in the near future as we get back to drilling, both on the extension ground to the north and continue drilling in our joint venture with the operating mine to the south.
Well, that's good news to hear, John. And obviously, I feel that you've handled this the right way. I think with these situations, sometimes if you don't deal with them right away and take the right approach to it, they can sort of get out of hand and snowball. So I think the approach that your company has taken has been the right one. And I think it very much plays into your long-term thinking that you've emphasized in previous interviews we've done with you, is that you are here to eventually sell this to a large mining company, and part of the things that they look for are those positive community relationships to be maintained as part of the project. When you sell it, right, you have the support of the community, and it sounds like you very much still have the support of the especially the people right in the immediate area of the project. That's correct?
That's true, and these projects always expand over time as they start to become more visible. And we're a public company, so we need to broadcast what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And these days with the internet, everything's connected, and people hear about that. And so it's logical that it expands the areas of interest. And the silver lining in this, I think, is that it's given us a chance to rethink what our longer term strategy is. That it starts to involve a greater group of people and a much farther reach away from the project. So as you mentioned, this is part of what we consider de-risking the project. One aspect of our business strategy is to find the mineralization. That's the fun geological part of it. But I think a lot of groups overlook the challenge of de-risking the project, which is doing all the work that you need to do to provide a pathway for it to be a mine that you can develop in the future. And so that's where we want to just catch our breath a little bit on this, make sure we're on solid footing for go forward. We have every legal right to push forward and do our drilling, but if that's going to cause an increased tension, that doesn't make sense in the long run.
Right. Okay. One thing I did notice, the company put out a news release at the start of the year that you're extending some of your warrants, and these are from a placement a few years back. Can you maybe walk us through the thought process there on
Yeah, we had some warrants that were due at the end of this month at $1.60. We'd anticipated that those might have a decent chance to be an attractive opportunity for the warrant holders, planning on being up and drilling and things moving well.
Yeah.
With the health-related delays over the past year and then the temporary suspension as we're drilling, we felt that those warrant holders didn't have the option to really see what we wanted to deliver by the time that decision was made. And so a number of them were approaching us, and it made sense to us to extend those. So we extended those out 6 months, which takes them to the end of the maximum 5-year period that those can be. So we felt it was just fair. The original financing they put in was meant to allow us to test this work, and they should be able to see those results to make that decision.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, I'm guessing these would be some of your strongest supporters from a shareholder standpoint, right?
Yeah, many of them are long-term supporters. It's not that we need to try to attract that in. We are, as you mentioned, we recently concluded a very important strategic alliance with Osisko Gold Royalties, and that's put us in a very good financial position. So we're not trying to stretch this out to try to draw that money in. What we're really trying to do is to deliver the results that we told those warrant holders that we would deliver for them to make their decision.
Yeah, oh, that's fair enough. Okay, well, obviously, I think the big news we want to talk about today is the company just put out some new results on your first 2 holes that you drilled at Anta Norte before the temporary shutdown. So I think let's start to unpackage that a bit. And what can you share with shareholders or potential shareholders that might be watching in terms of how those results, met your expectations? Did they exceed your expectations? What kind of information have those 2 holes provided you, when it comes to developing the deposit further?
Okay, great. If we pull up the next figure, it's a cross section that shows those 2 holes on it. And on this cross section, we can see that these 2 holes were very significant step outs to the north. All of our drilling to date has been drilling that we've completed under an agreement that we have with the Coimolache joint venture, the joint venture that operates the Tantahuatay mine on our southern boundary. And that's allowed us to drill out the mineralization that's immediately beneath the main core of our project area, what we consider the core of the AntaKori project. But we've had a large area to the north called Anta Norte that we've only been able to poke at from the south. So if we look on this section, we can see a fan of 3 holes, AK 34, 37, 41. That's as far north or as far to the right on this diagram as we were able to drill until recently. We've reached out to that north, and you can see just based on the barcodes on these holes that we've intersected some very interesting mineralization in those holes. The current pit outline that constrains our resource is shown on this diagram. We're right on the edge of it, so it's fairly shallow at this point. But you can see this is all new mineralization well outside of the pit that we're defining with this drilling. And when we received our new DIA, our new permit to allow us to step to the north last year, just before we had to shut down for health concerns, when we started back up in October, we completed our first 2 holes to step farther north. And what we geologically predicted that the system will continue to the north, that it wasn't cut off by a fault at this boundary. And holes 44 and 45 have confirmed our hypothesis that the mineralized system steps to the north. Hole 44 in particular had some very nice mineralization runs in it. We've got a run of almost 60 meters of a little over 1% copper equivalent in the upper portion of the holes, and a couple more runs between 50 and 100 meters in length farther down in the hole in the 0.4 to 0.5 copper equivalent. So good solid mineralization, and it's important to note that hole is not a minor step out. That's a 370 meter step out from the collar cluster of holes 34, 37, and 41. So these are major jumps to the north, and we're still in the system. It opens up a significant amount of area to the north of the system. Now we're anxious to begin to continue that drilling back towards us on this section and continue to drill along. If we look at the next figure, we can see a little better where these holes are located when it pulls up here. And this is a figure that is a plan view. It shows our land position. So we own 100% of the red claims. We have an option to earn a 60% interest in the yellow claims. That's the Kokirumi option. That's an option to acquire that ground from a 100% subsidiary of Buenaventura. And the black line, the black circle, is the outline of the conceptual pit. And you can see our drilling to date has really been centered in our red claims within that pit area. And we've been able to drill up to a boundary on this that comes from the upper left at holes AK-34 down through AK-26. But the two holes at 44 and 45 are on the upper portion of this diagram. Those are the first two that we've really been able to step out to the north. And we've demonstrated mineralization extends significantly out in that direction. We now want to move from those holes down to the southeast and continue to drill out that 300 to 400 meter or 500 meter width to the north and push that northern wall of this pit in that direction. So we're quite excited to get moving on this. If we look at the next figure, we can see why we're interested in moving to this area. This is a geophysical diagram that shows a rather distinctive feature we see. It's shown as kind of a donut-shaped feature. This is ground magnetic data. It's one manner in which you can process this, but that entire ring, including the central portion of the ring, is geologically or geophysically prospective to us. It's what we anticipate has potential to be mineralized. And 44 and 45 are the first time we've stepped significantly to the north. Up to this point in time, we've really only tested about the southwest quadrant of this feature. And with quite good results. We have over 500 million tons of quite attractive grade mineralization in that area, but we anticipate a substantial expansion to the project as we move in that direction. So these first two holes, 44 and 45, are on the upper left or western margin of that feature. Geologically, they tell us that we're probably near the peripheral portion of the system overall, and we're located near the periphery of that target. So it's telling us to move back towards the southeast, towards the center of the donut hole on this manner of looking at the geophysical data. So we anticipate when we start up drilling here in the next few weeks that at least one of the rigs will move down in and test that central portion, which we anticipate will be moving towards the center of the system.
John, was there a reason that you started on those two holes to the northwest?
It was a good question. It was a combination of factors on that. I mentioned that we have this agreement where we can earn a 70% interest in the Kokirumi ground. So both of those holes were located on Kokirumi ground. Mm-hmm. To earn 70%, we need to complete 7,500 meters of drilling to get to that point. Once we trigger that earn-in, then Buenaventura has a clawback option whereby they can elect to claw back to 70%, leaving us with 30% by paying us US $9 million. Prior to the Osisko deal, strategically it was important for us to complete those meters early to trigger that because it had potential implications of a non-equity financing, if you will, having that 9 million US come to us. That's less important to us now with the Osisko cash in hand, but still we would prefer to have 70%. We think that's more likely that Buenaventura will elect to claw back on that. And that's money that we can put towards community development projects and other things as we go forward. So we do want to complete that drilling, but we also want to move into that center portion, which geologically we're being told, geophysically we're being told to go in that direction now with the evidence we've found in these holes, and it happens to be 100% ground. So there are other considerations we have is that we have surface access agreements that are not complete in all of this area. So some areas are easier for us to work in, and other areas it's a little more complicated for us to get the drill rigs. But this downturn has actually turned out to be a nice quiet period of time we can focus on establishing additional access agreements and move forward that way. So we're better set up to test the full anomaly now.
So the Kokirumi agreement, after these last two holes that you drilled, John, I think you're approaching about 50% of the meters you need to get to your target, right?
That's correct. We have a little over 3,600 meters completed. So it won't take too many more holes. These tend to be long holes, so it won't take too many more holes for us to complete that.
So on the subject of long holes, I was going to ask, I think they both ended up around 800 meters before they were terminated.
Correct.
What was the planned depth? Like how much farther, how much deeper were you planning to go with those?
Geologically, we have two styles of mineralization on this project. There's an upper volcanic, Miocene volcanic hosted zone that's primarily to the south of us and more on the Tantuatai mine ground to the south. And then beneath that, there's a thick carbonate sequence. These are limestones. They're rocks that are easily converted to a style of mineralization we call skarn. And Peru's famous for its really big skarn deposits like Las Bambas and Antamina. We're in exactly the same geologic setting. So when we see those rocks, we like to drill all the way through those and test those. Those are the chemically receptive rocks. They're the good host rocks for mineralization. And we projected that base of that carbonate sequence would be about 700 or 800 meters down. We're a little over 800 meters in the holes, and we're still in that sequence at that depth. We would have normally continued these holes a little bit deeper, but we needed to terminate them at the time we did, so that both holes terminate in quite attractive mineralization, some of the better mineralization in the holes right now. When we go back and start drilling, we'll attempt to deepen those same holes and see if we can get in those, or if it's easier to drill a hole nearby to test all the way through the sequence. But we're approaching a normal depth on this would be about 800 to maybe 1,000 meters, which is about the extent of a very large open pit. That's the type depth you could get into with an open pit.
Yeah. So those holes are almost teasing you, ending in such good stuff. I mean, obviously you want to keep going with those.
They do want to tease us. In fairness, particularly 45, which didn't have a lot of mineralization on the top, but it's hitting some very interesting stuff right on the bottom. That's getting kind of deep to contemplate in an open pit. It could help us pull a pit out in that direction. But as I mentioned, it's telling us we're on the fringe of the system too. So we anticipate as we move back towards the center of the system, we'd like to see that mineralization come closer to the surface.
And so part of the evidence, I guess without getting too complicated, you were seeing very clear evidence. I think in the news release you mentioned zinc sort of being one of those Pathfinder elements that I believe tells you you're towards distal, would be the technical word, or more plain language would be farther away from the heat source. That's sort of reinforcing your belief that you want to move towards that donut hole center, and that's where you're going to get sort of the better mineralization or the.
Absolutely. This system, it's driven by typically a porphyry center, and then the porphyry produces this skarn mineralization where the fluids react with the reactive carbonate rocks around the outside. And in a general sense, they're often zoned from an inner copper gold portion of the system. And as you move out, you begin to see the gold decrease. You begin to see your lead and zinc increases as a peripheral expression of it. And the zinc in particular sometimes can be economically important. On this, we don't track that too much at this moment, but for example, at Antamina, they do produce a fair amount of zinc from their copper work there as well. So we will pay attention to see if that becomes a metal of importance to us. Right now, it's more of a zonation indicator that we're probably peripheral to the system, and we need to move back towards the center.
And what is the theory the mag low would represent? What exactly? What would cause that mag low versus the mag high on the outer ring of the donut?
Yeah, that's one way that we process this. That's a vertical integral product that we use, and the outer donut ring kind of shows the margin of an overall mag high. So that low is kind of a quiet area in the magnetic data with more change along that outer margin. Other ways that we process, a way that we look at it's called RTP, produces more of a solid red magnetic anomaly. So overall, that's a magmatic center. It's indicating a lot of times a higher magmatic center like that indicates you have an intrusive, the type intrusive that could be the driver for the porphyry system. Mm-hmm. And particularly when that reacts with the carbonate rocks, you produce a lot of magnetite to produce that anomaly. So the center is not caused by anything other than you're moving to the center of the system on this more than anything else.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's a good synopsis of the results. Was there anything that surprised you in the drilling based on the data that you got? Anything that you weren't expecting that you saw? Or was it more or less?
No, it actually, our geos did a pretty good job. Remember, as I mentioned, these were big step outs to the north, and that same line that we've been able to drill up to now, it's a northwest trending line, goes pretty much right down a valley bottom and is likely to be a major fault. And so one interpretation for this magnetic feature that we're testing could have simply been a magnetic but barren intrusive system that didn't cause any mineralization. So we're very pleasantly surprised that it's a strong hydrothermal system. There's good evidence that it's causing copper gold mineralization. So I wouldn't call that a surprise. It was a confirmation of what we wanted to see in those holes. So wasn't anything that really, it's just more information, and we're just anxious to begin to play off of this and drill the rest of that promising Anta Norte target area off.
Right. And I think it's important for people to remember too that these holes are drilled well, like you mentioned it earlier, they're well outside of the existing 2019 resource pit outline. Even some of the holes, the earlier holes that you mentioned, I think like 34, which is one of your best holes, it made like one of the, the best copper intercepts. It's not even in the pit right now.
No, we've drilled over 18,000 meters now of additional drilling to the north, and we've had over 60% of that drilling has intersected reportable intervals. So we're clearly extending mineralization to the north. One of the things we're looking forward to 21, in addition to getting some of the health challenges we have behind us on the project, is we're looking forward to be able to complete substantial drilling, complete our phase 2 program, and provide an updated resource. It'll probably come in Q3 or Q4 this year, but our eyes on seeing what type of a jump we can get with that. All the drilling to date indicates that we've already encountered substantially more mineralization.
Right on. Well, anything you would say you're particularly or maybe most excited about in 2021? Like, what has you most excited looking into the start of this year?
I think as part of our strategy as exploration geologists, and what we executed well with our predecessor company Antares, where we drilled out a large porphyry copper gold system and sold that to First Quantum, is that we try to identify these projects that have potential to be very large copper or copper gold systems, drill them out, show their size, de-risk them, prepare the path, and then ideally we like to monetize that by selling it to the company that will become the likely operator of the project. It's hard enough to find these. They're increasingly rare. We're not the only group that's done this over the last few decades, but putting your hands on one of these opportunities is quite a challenge right now. But an additional challenge to it is once you have it ready, once you've got the size of it demonstrated and have tackled some of the challenges on how you turn it into a mine, you have to depend on hitting the market right at the right moment on that. And that's one of the more exciting things for me coming up, is we were anticipating that we'd see a rise in copper price in the next few years, primarily due to electrification of just about every aspect of our lives right now. Right. And in decreasing grades in existing mines, and increasingly a challenge to put new mines into operation. As an industry, we're not putting new mines in as quickly as it needs to be. So that was well known, but I really thought that would be another year or two out on this. And it looks like one of the silver linings to the current health crisis and financial crisis that's attendant with that right now is that we're seeing a lot of stimulus, a lot of reactivation of the economy. And I think this copper price that's coming right now, when it initially started last year, I kind of thought it was a false start. But to me, it really has the markings of being a solid start. I think we're moving well into a period of elevated copper prices with potential for them to go even substantially higher than we're right now. For the type project we look for, we don't need those high prices for it to be an economically viable project. But when we get those high prices is when major companies start to produce a lot of cash and start to compete with each other to grow, and you're entering into your classic mergers and acquisition phase on this. And we need that feeding frenzy from the majors to be looking for the type of asset that we're delivering. So to me, that's the most exciting thing, is that this is, despite all the challenges we've had over the last year and our current challenges to get this back and drilling and back visible, is that we have potential for this to be delivering a project in almost a perfect storm of demand and prices.
Absolutely. Copper has been incredibly strong. I know a lot of well-respected, thought leaders in the resource space have been taken by surprise just how strong the move is. It's kind of blown through some very major resistance points. If you're you're a chart person, a technical analyst, it's even 330 a pound was a big mark, and it through that. We're 80 cents a pound in 2020. So Yeah, looks like you're in the right the right time to have a big copper deposit that you're looking to package together for somebody.
Yeah, I think it's perfect time, and we're perhaps a little bit overlooked right at the moment because we're slightly in the penalty box until we get those rigs turning again. But it's a great time to take a look at us, and if you want to bet in the medium term on a major opportunity for monetization of a project like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we last talked, I mean, the share price is at a significant discount to where it was 3 months ago. And, I guess if you bought 3 months ago, maybe you're not so happy, but this is an opportunity for people now to take advantage of a lower price to get in at a better price point, right? So, in the market.
Well, it's understandable groups kind of or investors chasing groups that are producing more news flow right now, but we'll be back to that soon. And I think it's important not to overlook what we really already have in hand. We've got a pretty substantial resource in hand to begin.
As it is without all this drilling that you're doing, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, John, it's always great to chat with you. Thanks for coming on again, giving an update to shareholders or those potentially looking at taking a position. I'll be certainly looking forward to having you back on the show, and then the next month or so, hopefully, to share some more results.
Okay, that'd be great, and plenty of information on our website. And don't hesitate to contact us if you'd like more information about us. So, thank you very much, John.
Okay, thanks as well, John. Take care.
Okay, bye.